on Australia's channel. This is Media Week.
Hello and welcome to Media Week. Ahead, Chief Investment Officer of Media Brands Victor Coronis joins us to discuss the changing TV landscape in light of online video's rising popularity. Plus, News Corp launches its first new consumer campaign since relaunching digital subscriptions. But first, a memoir by former Sunrise executive producer and Ten's head of breakfast Adam Boland has been released to the market ahead of schedule. Brekkie Central has started being distributed by Melbourne University Press and also online as an e-book, coming just a week after Seven attempted legal action against Boland to see if the book breached confidentiality agreements. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by guest host James Manning, editor and publisher of Media Week. James, great to have you on the show as always. So, what do you think of Adam Boland's book? Have you had a read yet?
I have, yeah. Stayed up reasonably late last night. Look, it's not a big book to get through, about 200 pages, I think. But there was, I think Melbourne University Press was doing a lot of business on its downloads last night. So you can buy it as an e-book. Look, it's a good value. It's about $13. And I think people were probably downloading it just in case Seven sort of reacted and they got an injunction or something and it went sort of off the market. But look, Seven read it as well overnight, I think, and they said, look, there's nothing in it, meaning there's nothing, their IP hasn't been... the copyright, hasn't been broken there, his confidentiality agreement, so they're all okay with it. Happy to see it go on sale. Yeah, look, it's a good read. It's a quick read. He jumps around from, his media career, lots of different things. There's times when you really want a bit more detail on certain things. The last page of the book, he talks about being the most hated man in television, which you feel like you want to go and give him a hug and say, no, look, that's not right. I think he might have confused a lot of his colleagues and a lot of friends over the years, but I don't think he's certainly hated, so that's sort of wrong. But you bear that in mind when you're reading the book, when you hear that did he, was he worried about maybe his perception at times and that he backed off a little bit on some of the detail? Do
you think he was cautious, though, given that he knew he had this confidentiality agreement with Seven?
Yeah, well, I think he wouldn't have signed that, without realising the implications. So yeah, so he was, but still, there's other things where he could have had a bit of detail that wouldn't have perhaps breached that confidentiality, and it just would have been nice to get it. Like, there's some things where there's the Justin Bieber episode, which was a massive day for Sunrise and a massive event for the show, but there's so much detail and there's other things that they skim over. And you think, a bit more balance might have been nice.
So coming across likeable, though, in the book, from what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's always come across as likeable. Yeah, no, he's not a hated man.
All right. Speaking of Seven, they've made a new hire in digital to help with this whole bolster these plans in television going forward.
Yeah, look, they've done very well. A guy called Clive Dickens, who's been working out here he's an Englishman who's been out here for a couple of years working for Southern Cross Austereo. I think I've told this story before, but he came out and he spoke to the radio conference a couple of years ago. I think it was down in Melbourne one year, and the guys from Southern Cross Austereo were in the room, and you could tell they were very impressed, and he subsequently got a job. So he's just very good on the digital front. He's been an investor in Shazam, the little app. He's one of the guys there at the start of that, so he really knows digital well. In the release, Seven talked about their future content delivery platform, so they're obviously looking at where they're going with their business model, and he'll be great in doing that. And it'll also start a bit of speculation saying, well, look, Clive's a good radio guy. Will Seven be looking at investing in radio? They do have a small radio business in Western Australia, so you never know.
Well, speaking of all this, there's been a lot of discussion recently about the changing TV landscape and threats to the current business models of the broadcasters as they try to counter the arrival of Netflix in Australia. One person who's been examining this and the implications for advertisers is Victor Coronis from Media Brands. He joins us now in the studio. Victor, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
I know you've recently published some research, I guess, on viewing outside the box. What did you find out of that? What was interesting that came out of that?
I think first and foremost, it was about getting an understanding of how consumers were viewing content, because they don't necessarily view the world as free-to-air or subscription, but they view it as a choice of content. And what we were seeing is the behaviour and consumer habits that were taking place had progressed quite considerably in that area, probably far more than what a lot of people had realised.
The interesting thing about this document is the implications for advertisers and marketers that have been, relying on, free-to-air television for their big audiences, getting their big messages across. Their developments, look, we'll get a new OzTam audience report this week, I think, that'll say, look, TV's still 90% of all video consumption or something. But are there changes happening marketers need to be on top of now?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the key learnings that came through the research, was that TV is still a dominant medium and will continue to be for a number of years. But when you start to break that down and look at some of the younger audiences, particularly under 35, some of the scalability that you can achieve through video was definitely worthy of serious consideration in light of what they were doing with their viewing consumption. But the investment that's taking place probably lags to where they need to be thinking and shifting. It's currently video only represents 3% of total screen advertising, if we look at both TV and video combined. And we expect that to grow to probably like 13% by 2019.
Are changes, though, in measuring this and television measurement moving quick enough to keep up with the pace?
I would have to be honest and say no, but I know that as an industry, everyone is moving as fast as they can to try and make sure that it is. And I know that Oztam is looking to bring something into the market probably as soon as Q2. That's been moved forward. In the absence of all of that, agencies are also working on metrics to help understand the value of what's happening in this space and how it contributes to a client's overall media plan.
Content companies and broadcasters seem to be pretty active in trying to, cover off where the audiences might go with the growth in online viewing of whether you call it streaming or video on demand. How quickly do you think that could change?
There is absolute pent-up appetite within consumers, and I think it will happen very quickly. And we've seen that evidence through the illegal downloads of content. Ultimately, when consumers are after content, they will go and chase it down. If we can make that as easy as possible, they're prepared to pay for it, and it will take some time. We're expecting this Christmas probably a number of big pushes behind the HBB TV, IQ3, Google's Chromecast and other devices that will probably help accelerate that. So certainly over the next 12 to 18 months, we would expect that space to start moving at a rapid pace.
So if that happens, will there be different sort of demands from consumers, or will they just want more of what they already get?
I think ultimately we're going to get the best of both worlds. It is more of what we want, and looking at back catalogue content as well as catch-up content, but content that we currently don't get in this country or isn't freely available to us. So we're probably going to start finding two streams, and it's quite possible that your next door neighbour will also be a king of content, creating their own content to then share with friends and family. But we've seen in the past that you can get some serious scale there, so they could be your next secret director.
Are any of the new players or the expanding, existing players reaching out to ad agencies yet? Will they be involved? And is there any concern that advertisers might miss out unless, and say like an ad-free model like Netflix gets a real foothold here?
Yeah, at the moment with these new players that keep being talked about, there's not really a lot of dialogue going on just yet, but that we would expect that will occur sometime down, in the next 6 to 12 months. Realistically, though, if you look at TV as an example and the ABC, which doesn't carry advertising, the benefit of something like that is that it adds to the vibrancy of the overall environment. So having a player in the market that isn't necessarily funded by advertising still means that the overall sector benefits from it. So by having new players come into the market and getting more eyeballs moving to that market, eventually eyeballs and advertising will follow, and then the sales models will start to flow through as well.
So there's no concern about sort of the role of advertisers in these sort of ad-free platforms like Netflix?
I don't think there are any immediate concerns, but ultimately it will come down to how the ad model works, and clients will need to understand that, because there's not going to be a lot of tolerance for long ad breaks, particularly in that whole lean-forward environment on a mobile phone or a tablet where you're consuming content that you want. And I think also the classification of content. Advertisers want to be in a brand-safe environment, so it's critical that that is being laid out and developed as quickly as it can to ensure that advertisers aren't in a situation or an environment they don't want to be in.
You said there's some more scope for advertisers maybe to take more advantage of the existing audiences for online video. What are the costs like? Is it a little bit cheaper if you can go to the trouble of chasing that audience online, or is it comparable with the going through the traditional media?
On face value, you would probably say that video looks more expensive than the free-to-air CPMs. But when you start to break that down and look at the appeal to a younger audience, the screen effectiveness, and the use of shorter ads, you actually then start to find that costs do start to stack up, and you'll find that if you want to balance out a TV schedule, that incorporating video helps to balance the younger end as well as the broader, older end that TV delivers really well.
Just finally, Victor, are there any concerns from advertisers about regulation of the online offerings in the online world?
To date, no. But I'm sure that as things start to evolve, there will be, I guess, ongoing monitoring in that area. But I would expect the preference will be that as an industry it self-regulates and moves as the demand from advertisers
all right,
changes.
Victor, great to have your company on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us. Victor Caroni's there, Chief Investment Officer at Media Brands. We do have to take a quick break on Media Week, but coming up next, implications for Fairfax as the chairman, Roger Corbett, confirms he will step down. We'll have details next.